വായനക്കൂട്ടം.
വായനക്കൂട്ടത്തിൽ ചാൾസ് ഡിക്കൻസിന്റെ എ ക്രിസ്മസ് കരോൾ എന്ന ചെറുകഥയെ വിശകലനം ചെയ്യുന്നു Alen.C.Babu, MA ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ലാംഗ്വേജ് ആൻഡ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ വിദ്യാർത്ഥി.
Hello friends, on this episode of Vayanakkoottam, let us take a look at A Christmas Carol, a short story written by the renowned English author Charles Dickens. A Christmas Carol is the story of a stone-hearted man and his incredible transformation into a human being with kindness. Ebenezer Scrooge is the protagonist in this story. Scrooge was a wealthy man, but also a miser. His miserliness is so vividly depicted in the story that the name Scrooge later became a synonym for misers. The story begins with Scrooge sitting all alone at his home. He dislikes Christmas and its celebrations. He refuses a dinner invitation from his nephew Fred. He turns away people who came for a donation to help the poor during winter. And above all, on Christmas Day, he reluctantly allows a day off for his clerk Bob Cratchit just because he has to conform with tradition. On that night, Scrooge happens to see the ghost of his old business partner, Jacob Marley. Marley's ghost was bound in chains connected to heavy money boxes, which indicate the riches he made during his lifetime of greed. Marley's ghost warns Scrooge that if he doesn't change ways, he would suffer even worse than this after his death. He also advises Scrooge to listen to the three spirits which would soon come to visit him. The first spirit, the ghost of Christmas past, visits Scrooge and gives him a glimpse of his childhood and earlier days at work. He sees his lonely childhood and warm relations with his sister. He also sees how Mr. Fezziwig, his first boss, treated him as a son. He also gets to see how his one-time lover abandoned him as she realized that he loved money a lot more than her. The second spirit, the ghost of Christmas present, takes Scrooge to a market and shows happy people buying things for Christmas dinner. The ghost also shows Tiny Tim, the youngest child of Scrooge's clerk Bob Cratchit. Tim was a small boy who suffered from a serious illness. The ghost warns Scrooge that Tim would die if Cratchit struggled to support his family. Scrooge is then shown how many people find joy in Christmas even in their poverty. He is also warned to beware of ignorance and greed. The third spirit, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, shows Scrooge a Christmas day in the future. The scenes show the death of a disliked man and his funeral, which is attended by very few people. The deceased man's possessions are stolen by those who conduct the funeral. The only people who have any emotion over his death are a couple who had to repay money borrowed from him. The ghost shows Bob Cratchit's family weeping over the death of Tiny Tim as an example of sympathy for anyone's death. The ghost finally shows Scrooge's grave, which lay in a neglected state. These scenes push Scrooge to tears, and he decides to reform himself. On Christmas Day, Scrooge wakes up as a completely changed man. He contacts the charity that he turned away the other day and gives them a big amount of money to help the poor. He sends a turkey to Bob Cratchit's home and gives him a pay rise. He spends the afternoon with his nephew Fred. From that day, Scrooge began treating everyone with kindness and compassion. He embraces the Christmas spirit for the rest of his life. A Christmas Carol asks us many questions. What makes us human? Is money everything? We see two imaginary demonic children, ignorance and greed in the story. These two vices aren't features of just the 19th century when this story was written. They still exist even today. Are we able to find time to consider the weak among us? Want has made us so blind that we are often unable to see the plight of those who suffer amongst us. This 19th century story by Dickens keeps asking questions and makes people think even today. Kindness and compassion can buy things which money can never buy. Wishing you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
വായനക്കൂട്ടം.
വായനക്കൂട്ടത്തിൽ ചാൾസ് ഡിക്കൻസിന്റെ എ ക്രിസ്മസ് കരോൾ എന്ന ചെറുകഥയെ വിശകലനം ചെയ്തത് അലൻ സി ബാബു, MA ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ലാംഗ്വേജ് ആൻഡ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ വിദ്യാർത്ഥി.